It's finally here, the large format Bambu Lab 3D printer that I think a lot of us have been looking forward to, myself included. This is the brand new Bambu Lab H2S, and in today's video, I'll be giving you an initial look at this newest 3D printer from Bambu Lab and showing you some of the things that I've printed with it so far, some of the issues that I've had, and more importantly, is it too little, too late with the competition now rushing towards tool changers? And just a few months ago, Bambu Lab announced the H2D, and it looks almost identical here to the H2S, and the H2S basically borrows from the entire design of the H2D, but the big difference between those two is the S stands for single nozzle here for this H2S 3D printer, and that means it also has a larger build volume. And that new larger build volume comes out to 340 by 320 by 340 millimeters. That is a good bit larger than the build volume of the H2D. And when the H2D was initially announced, that was easily my biggest complaint, was that it was, yes, technically a larger Bambu Lab 3D printer, but you were still limited in the actual printable build volume space, depending if you were using one nozzle or both nozzles for your 3D prints. With this updated printer, we're getting exactly what a lot of us were asking for, which was basically a larger X1 carbon. This print volume allows me to print basically any kind of helmet that I could dream up and wanting to print here on the H2S. That also means, unlike the H2D that has dual print heads, that's gonna help reduce the print time when it comes to printing with multi-colors, the H2S is gonna function just more like your Bambu Lab A1, the P1P, the P1S, or the X1 carbon when it comes to multicolor 3D printing and having that single nozzle. So that means lots of filament swaps and purging. You've also probably noticed that it's actively been printing while I've been talking with you all, and this just goes to show how quiet this 3D printer is while it's up and running. This is very similar to the H2D and just how loud that is when it's printing, or I should say quiet compared to most other 3D printers that are on the market. I should also point out that my unit did come with a shattered front door. I swear I did not break that front door. As soon as I was unboxing it, I noticed that the front glass door was broken. Bambu Lab was able to get me a replacement door sent out to me right away, thanks to it just being the same door design as the H2D, and I was able to get that swapped in and out. Also, thankfully, the doors are bagged, which really helped minimize the amount of debris that I ended up having to clean up. And speaking of that glass door, the front door can open up to a full 180 degrees, which allows you plenty of room to get in there and access the inside of this printer. The other noticeable difference with the H2S compared to the H2D is that there's no side window panel on the right side of the H2S. I honestly kind of miss that because that's such a nice feature that's there on the H2D. It also has the same 5-inch touchscreen that you're gonna find over on the H2D, and it also allows you to angle that upwards almost to a full 90 degrees. Also, I don't know what it is, but the touchscreen interface on the H2D and the H2S are easily the best touchscreen interface that I've ever worked with on a 3D printer. It's just so responsive and easy to use. There's also a top-mounted USB port for offline 3D printing, as well as managing all of your different time lapses, as well as print files. And just like on the H2D, there is a vented top that will help bring in air when printing with materials like PLA. And on the back side of the H2S, you're gonna have 2 inlet ports. You're only gonna use one of them because it's a single nozzle printer. And unfortunately, there is no upgrade option to bring you to the H2D. So that's something definitely you'll need to consider before buying either the H2D or the H2S. Also, just like on the H2D, there is a TPU inlet port. I have not tested printing this with TPU yet. That is definitely on my to-do list. Also, if you don't end up printing with an AMS, there is a side-mounted spool holder as well. That's great for any larger spools of filament. I'm looking at you printed solid and Prusament. And just like on the H2D, there is a rear vent as well. So it'll automatically use the front vent to bring in air and then the rear vent to export the air out. And on the backside, you'll also find the power plug as well as the on-off switch. And there is also that same key that you'll have on the H2D, which is still very odd to me. I guess that's for like, if you don't want anybody using the printer unless they have the key, but the key's in the back of the printer, which just kind of makes it weird to reach around and try and plug that in and take it out when it's not in use. And just like on all of the Bambu Lab 3D printers and so many other 3D printers that have come since Bambu Lab, we now have a poop chute on the back of the 3D printer that as you're purging material, it'll spit out the back, and there is still no out-of-the-box solution for managing that, which I still don't quite understand. Use some of that packing material and see if we can have a perforated temporary poop chute bin holder. I don't know what. There needs to be something besides it just spitting out and letting the user figure out how to deal with that. And speaking of the AMS, I'm using the AMS 2 Pro, which was released with the Bambu Lab H2D. Nothing's really changed there. This allows you to dry your filaments. You can't dry while you're printing, which is kind of a bummer. And it also sort of vents out any moisture that might occur when it's drying your filaments for you. I've also been using cardboard spools without any sort of rims or anything like that, with zero issues with the AMS 2 Pro. Please be aware that does void your warranty if you decide to do that, like I'm using this here, but it's working well. They've also said that you can connect up to 4 AMS 2 Pros along with 8 of the AMS high temp single spool holders, allowing you to print with up to 24 different colors. And on the inside of the printer, since this is the H2S, again, this only has the single extruder, unlike the dual print head that you have on the H2D. And it is using that quick swapping hot end design that we found on the H2D, very similar to the A1, but these nozzles are specifically for the H2D and the H2S. And one of the coolest things that I found about the H2S is that you can fully utilize the full build volume of the 3D printer. Unlike the X1 Carbon and a lot of the other Bambu Lab 3D printers, there is exclusions typically that you find, or you have to print little adapters in order to be able to print with the full build volume of the printer. So far with the H2S, it seems like you can print with the full build volume of the 3D printer. I can slice up a full cube and have it actually slice. And I printed some fairly large things that I can't print on the H2D or any of my other Bambu Lab printers. And just like the H2D, it does have that status light LED bar on the bed that'll show you the print progress of your 3D print, as well as change colors throughout the process of your print jobs. There's also some bright dual lights on the interior that really help illuminate the 3D printer, allowing you to very easily remotely monitor and keep a close eye on anything that you're 3D printing. And speaking of, that's right, you can still use the Bambu Handy app thanks to that camera, and it does have built-in AI detection, which I ran into with a few of my prints. And just like on the H2D, this does have an actively heated chamber, so if you needed to print with some more of those advanced materials, the H2S can also handle those. I should also mention that it comes stock with a hardened steel nozzle, again, perfect for printing some of those advanced materials. And one last thing that wasn't really on any spec sheet or anything like that I'm really enjoying with the H2D as well as the H2S is the relatively flat bottom of the print bed. Makes it so much easier to clean up any debris that might end up on the bottom of your printer. Now, most importantly, what's this thing gonna cost? Now, initially here, they only have 2 variations of this up for sale. They have the combo unit that comes with the AMS 2 Pro along with the H2S, and then they have the variation that I don't have access to, which includes the laser engraver and cutter combination that honestly, I'm not really that interested in. So the combination here that I'm showing off is retailing for $1,499. To compare that up against the H2D combo, you're saving about $750 with this single nozzle version. And what's even crazier is when you decide to compare the H2S to the X1 Carbon combination with the AMS 2 Pro, there is only a $130 price difference between the two models. That is insane. For an extra $130 over the X1 Carbon, you are gonna get a massive 3D printer. And they did mention that they're gonna be releasing a standalone version of the H2S in October that does not include the AMS 2 Pro, that's gonna retail for $1,249. Compared to some of the other competition out there, I think this price point is a really attractive option for anybody looking for just a single extruder 3D printer with a larger build volume that have all the typical perks and features that come with a Bambu Lab 3D printer. And once I got mine set up, the very first thing that I went and 3D printed was this Iron Man and Friends inspired Iron Man green helmet here. It's part of a whole other video project that I'm working on, but I printed this in silk PLA, which is not exactly ideal, but I wanted to just really throw this down and see what it could do at a 0.28 layer height. And the AI notifications actually kicked in because this filament was not dried and it was stringing like crazy, and it thought that there was actually spaghetti errors that were occurring for the print. Overall, the print turned out really good and it got the job done that I needed. You can see a small line where the print had paused and then I went and resumed that. But in general, this turned out great. Also, with how I had that oriented, I would have definitely not been able to fit that on my X1 carbon. The next thing I needed to print was a poop chute, so I found this design from Cubify over on Maker World that was for the H2D, which fits perfectly here with the H2S. And I printed this with Bambu Lab's PETG HF, and it was stringing like crazy and has a really rough finish. So more than likely, again, I should have dried this out before printing with it, but I ended up getting it set up and using it, and we'll see some of the issues that I ran into with this because it is not perfectly smooth. Also, this just goes right back to, I really wish that I could print and dry my filament at the same time. Now, I really wanted to test out something utilizing that full larger build volume of the H2S that I can't print on the H2D. So I combined some files from Yosh Studios, which I was able to print with this Ultron helmet. And unfortunately, my robot vacuum knocked the power cable out from the printer mid-print overnight. And once I got everything connected back up, unfortunately, there is a small layer shift where the print ended up resuming itself. But one really cool thing that I was able to utilize is the partial roll feature, where I was able to continuously eat through some of my partial rolls that I have, thanks to the AMS2 Pro. This back of the helmet turned out so good other than that one layer shift, and this took almost 17 hours for this to print at a 0.24 layer height. I then positioned things so I could print the chin and the faceplate at the same time, which again would have been 2 separate print files over on the X1 carbon. And once I've got all the other parts printed and everything assembled, this turned out incredible. This is what I'm talking about, being able to print some really large props here that have incredible results thanks to some of the magic that Bambu Lab has baked into their printers. I did also have one of the mesh eyes that ended up failing, but I printed these other options that I actually prefer even better that I have installed here. And I'm actually able to wear this as well. I then wanted to test using some of the multicolor functionality, so I found this lizard meme that I went and printed. There are 18 of these little guys here, and in hindsight, I should have added a little bit more supports because there is definitely some overhang issues around the mouth area for these prints, and this took about 15 hours. And as expected, there was a good amount of purging that was needed for this, even though there was only 3 colors for this print. That's just the one downside of having a single extruder. Now, in all my years of 3D printing, I've never actually printed with ABS before, and I figured why not attempt that with this new fancy 3D printer. So I loaded up some Polylite ABS and started printing this Dr. Doom mask from Henry Creations. This printed at 0.12 layer height, and I think looks really clean. There was definitely some stringing, so maybe I could have done a little bit of drying as well before printing this, but in general, I'm very happy with the results that I'm seeing off of this so far. I should also mention that when I popped in to check on the print, there was no strong fumes that I was smelling, so I'm assuming the built-in filters were doing their job. Now, if you're looking for something really awesome to print, I cannot recommend enough this TIE Fighter card kit by the Galactic Armory. This turned out so good. This is really easy to print. I ended up scaling this up to 140% of the original size, which really maxed out that build volume here on the H2S and got everything printed. As expected, I would have saved some print time as well as filament by printing this on the H2D. However, I would have not been able to print it at the scale that I did without printing it here on the H2S. Now here's where things get really fun. I had a vacation scheduled where I was gonna be gone for a week, so I decided to load up a Spider-Man mask that I was gonna print at 0.12 layer height and have it multicolor print the entire thing while I was gone on vacation. It would have taken just over 4 days of printing, but Unfortunately, that poop chute slide issue kind of crept up on me, and I ended up having a major backup, and the print ended up failing and giving me warning notifications. And unfortunately, I was already on vacation, so I had to go on the app and cancel the print. And this is where you see the big advantage of the H2D and its dual nozzles, especially for printing something basic like this, which was just primarily red and black. On the H2D, this printed, I think, in about 3 days, and there was no wasted material whatsoever other than the purge tower. So, you know, even with the small amount that I printed here on the H2S, it wasted a significant amount of filament compared to what you can get off of the H2D. Again, definitely something to consider if you're looking to do a lot of multicolor printing or just want a big printer. I was also able to verify that the object cancellation functionality works correctly on the H2S. I was printing this Predator Oni Mask from Nico Industries, and the back half of the mask randomly started failing. Unfortunately, the AI detector didn't detect that, so I thankfully caught it and then used the skip functionality to skip that part and was able to continue printing all the other parts. Now, I wanted to try and print one last big multicolor print, so I ended up finding this awesome Treant file from Superprints, scaled this up massively, loaded it up with 4 different colors, and then got to printing. Now, I ended up pushing this printer a bit to its limits by overriding some of the default settings. It initially wouldn't allow me to print with this 0.4 nozzle at a 0.32 layer height, so I had to go into the settings and adjust that to allow that to work. And I ended up printing this in sport mode to help try and speed things up. You'll also see where some of the color transitions, where it was going from white to the other colors, didn't quite blend as well as they should have, and that's because I adjusted those values to have quicker purges. Also, you'll see toward the top where there was a slight seam issue, and I thought it might have been due to the rails, but nope, it was due to me opening the door and filming content, which you can see in the time lapse of the print. And finally, I wanted to try testing out a quick last-minute print before this video goes live, so I ended up trying to swap out the 0.4 nozzle with a 0.8 nozzle. However, it looks like I had a whole bunch of ABS goo that was gunked over onto the extruder, which was preventing me from removing it, so I had to heat up the hot end, and then I was able to successfully get that off and then swap that out with a 0.8 nozzle. And this print took just under 7 hours to finish 3D printing, and I honestly think it turned out fantastic just using some basic default settings that I found in Bambu Studio for that 0.8 nozzle. And again, I scaled this really tiny model up by, I think, like 950% of its original size to fit the build volume here of the H2S. Another fun print that I would have not been able to fit on the build volume of the H2D just because of how tall this model ended up being. Now, while I did get some really great looking prints off of the H2S, I did have some callouts that I just wanted to mention. The first and foremost, that's the same callout that I have on the H2D as the H2S. The included power cable is just way too short. It's only like 3 to maybe 4 feet long. It's just way too short in my opinion, and it needs to be at least 5 or 6 feet long. For the price point, I feel like there should be a better built-in storage solution for managing your print files or time lapses on the machine, or at least come with some kind of a expanded USB drive. I did think I found one potential bug is with the object cancellation functionality. When you cancel an object, it still shows the full print time regardless of the objects that you canceled, and it took 5 minutes or 2 hours for your object to print. And honestly, the biggest issue that I ran into was the poop chute backing up. I had that printed slide. Even with a smoother version that I reprinted with PETG, I'm still having issues with the purged filament backing up on that sled. It might be an issue with that particular design. However, I've used it just fine on my H2D, but for whatever reason here on the H2S, it continues to back up. Maybe it's because it's purging more material than I really purge with the H2D. But outside of that, this machine has pretty much met all of my expectations that I've had for a larger Bambu Lab 3D printer so far. This is by no means a review. I've only had a few hundred hours with this machine so far. I'm really looking forward to digging in and printing even more with it, using TPU and some other materials on this printer and seeing how all of those print. I'll definitely be doing some follow-up videos here on the H2S once I have those ready. Now, obviously we can't end this conversation without talking about tool changers and the impact that's gonna have on Bambu Lab and their 3D printers. Obviously we have things like the Prusa XL, which has already been available and is significantly more expensive for that 5 print tool head version of their 3D printer, which has an even larger build volume than the H2S. However, Snapmaker just launched their record-breaking Kickstarter campaign for their 4-head tool change 3D printer. Again, that build volume is smaller than what we have here on the H2S or the H2D. However, the desire for people to not waste as much material when it comes to multicolor printing or multi-material printing has become ever more present and prevalent. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bambu Lab tackles that in the near future. I'm assuming they've already been working on a tool changer system for their 3D printers or a newer 3D printer that has tool changers capabilities built into it, but we might not see that for another year plus. Well, I'm still in the middle of editing and wrapping up this video, and good thing because Bambu Lab just surprised everyone with the announcement that they are in fact working on a multi-tool head option that's gonna be available by the end of the year. I'm still waiting to see more information on it, but it looks really interesting and definitely something that's slightly different, and it looks like it's going to be compatible with anybody that owns an H2D and I believe an H2S. So this could be what a lot of folks are looking for, that it's going to save on filament, but I'm just really interested in seeing more on how all of it's going to function compared to the actual tool changers that some of the other brands are implementing. The other call out that I have is Bambu Lab, in their short lifespan of making 3D printers, has had a relatively good track record of maintaining and continually providing updates to their 3D printers once you purchase them. So, you know, it sort of remains to be seen how this Snapmaker is gonna function, how it's gonna work, how well they're gonna maintain it, all that good stuff. But it is an ever-growing market that we're seeing more and more competitors starting to release updates for their 3D printers or roll out tool changer options for their machines. That's clearly going to be the next direction that we see a lot of other brands taking, and it'll be interesting to see how Bambu Lab tackles that. And let me know what you think in the comments down below of this larger Bambu Lab single tool head 3D printer. And obviously a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for your continued support, me making videos just like this one here. I'm gonna be rolling out some behind the scenes footage of the unboxing and setup and printing, and just additional thoughts on the H2S, which you'll be able to find over in my Patreon as well as my YouTube memberships. And definitely make sure you're subscribed because I'll be doing some follow-up soon on the H2S with some more 3D prints. Hey, thanks so much for watching all, and I'll see you next time.